Good morning, metalheads of the internet, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Metal Meltdown. Today we are talking about a brand new studio album from American blackened speed metal crew Midnight, entitled Let There Be Witchery. This is the fifth official studio album from Midnight, but honestly, it could be like project release number fucking 18,000 for all I know, because holy shit, the amount of EPs and demos and splits and live albums that they've released over the course of the past 20 fucking years is insane. These guys actually existed for 8 years, long before they even thought of putting out an album. That album being 2011's Satanic Royalty, which some of you may remember I recently called one of the sexiest metal albums of all time in a special Valentine's Day collaboration with Necrosexual. And I fucking stand by that, man. I mean, you've got Athanar, who is just a mysterious figure all around. You've got these really dirty, sexually charged, explicit lyrics. There's a lot of violence. The sound itself, it's just debauchery and whiskey in sonic form. It's just such a gnarly, sleazy, dirty little fucking creation. That album artwork, too, with those two girls lusting over the knife. That's fucking cool. I love how I'm explaining all of this as my fucking fiance sits on the couch doing, what are you doing exactly? Looking at Elden Ring memes?
I don't know, I was just on the internet.
You're just on the internet. I'm like explaining like, oh, all this dirty, sexy, sleazy shit. She had her tits out and she's just sitting there just like this is just a normal day at Metal Meltdown HQ. Since then, Midnight have not made any drastic changes to their sound or presentation whatsoever, but they haven't really needed to because they've continued to produce so much high-quality material. To a certain extent, they have become this genre's equivalent to the Black Dahlia Murder, or Cannibal Corpse, or Aborted, more or less making the same album over and over again, refining here and there whenever necessary, never really releasing anything that I would consider a dud, that the metal masses as a whole would consider a failure. And honestly, Let There Be Witchery is no exception whatsoever to this rule, contrary to what some other metal YouTubers might like to tell you. Sorry, pair of jeans, I love you, but we're just not gonna see eye to eye on this. I had a fucking blast with this record. Yes, it is an incredibly simplistic, straightforward, formulaic, predictable record. It is derivative. It is all of these things very much so by design. But when you're producing as much high-quality material as this, I don't fucking care. Like, don't get me wrong, folks, I consider myself a very progressive and open-minded metalhead. As far as I'm concerned, the weirder something is, the better, or at the very least, the more interesting it is to talk about for a review. I love seeking out crazy, weird, funky fucking shit. You know, I love fine wine and truffles and foie gras and watching Academy Award-worthy films, but you know what I also like? I also like ordering pizza and watching a dumb fucking slasher movie. And that is Midnight in a fucking nutshell right there. If nothing I've said so far has convinced you, then perhaps Opening Cut Telepathic Nightmare will. It is a very dirty, aggressive, and straightforward kind of blackened speed metal punk bruiser with a very simple and somewhat crude chorus that is made super infectious thanks to the overall enthusiasm and energy of the track. Like, I love how it is just shouted over top of these really gnarly, old-school heavy metal riffs. I've always seen Midnight as a much more competent version of Venom, like the dirtiness, the grittiness, the sleaziness, the satanic imagery and atmosphere of Venom, but fully realized and brought to the modern age with the production and songwriting of a classic heavy metal band like Motorhead. And I very much continue to see them that way across the majority of this record through tracks like Nocturnal Molestation, Frothing Foulness, In Sinful Secrecy, Torment, the latter of which does lean heavier into the Motorhead influence, I would say, with some really dirty, slower kind of heavy metal riffs. There's some cowbell. It's just in general a much sleazier, dirtier cut. Like, this is something I could picture being played at a heavy metal strip club, if such a thing even exists. Tons of tasty guitar licks and choruses to be found across these tracks. I did notice that in general this album is a little sleazier, a little sexier, a little bit more inappropriate than previous records. I mean, Midnight in general is a pretty foul band. I don't think that's even up for debate. But I do think that lyrically this thing is a little bit more foul than perhaps the last couple of Midnight records. I mean, you've got the aforementioned In Sinful Secrecy and Nocturnal Molestation, which are just pure fucking blackened speed metal sex appeal. There's also the track Devil Virgin, which is very crude, very greasy. It's got kind of like some classic Judas Priest hard rock flavor, which I think makes this all the more rambunctious and exciting and wrong, so to speak. There's also Snake Obsession, which on top of being just a super raw, nasty blast of old school thrash energy and power, just sounds generally phallic, to be blunt. And then there's, of course, the album's lead single and closing track, Sex Witchery, which is exactly what you think it is. A raucous, nasty, in-your-face, blackened speed, thrash metal banger with the kind of sexual energy required to turn a mosh pit into a full-blown fucking orgy if you're not careful. Or if you're really careful, I guess. I don't know. I don't know you. I don't know what you do in your spare time, and it's none of my fucking business. The point is, Midnight sounds like Midnight on this album. It's sleazier, it's dirtier in some aspects, and I will say the production overall is a lot cleaner. Like, it's clear that Metal Blade Records has put some money into this record, which I think is good. But all that aside, it ultimately functions and feels like a Midnight album. And with that in mind, if you don't like Midnight, I guess there's no reason whatsoever to check out this album. This is not going to do anything to convince you of the glory of Midnight. It's Midnight doing what they do best, and it's really hard for me to kind of argue and nitpick when I have thoroughly enjoyed every second of it. So for me, this is a very, very, very enthusiastic 3.5 out of 5. It's the perfect record for a full-blown fucking party, you know? Get a bunch of fucking booze, order a bunch of fucking junk food, watch a bunch of stupid movies, smoke a bunch of pot, take each other's pants off, see where the night fucking goes, you know. It's a party record. If you're not gonna party to this fucking record, then there's really no point in listening to it whatsoever. I'm honestly not even sure what else to say. It's Midnight. It's fun. It's simple. Yes, it's predictable. Yes, it's formulaic. And yeah, it arguably does lose a little bit of its luster and steam on repeat listens, but it still remains, you know, full of lust and steam, so that's something. 3.5 out of 5. I think it's a fucking really good record. Definitely check it out. And that is it for the Metal Meltdown. I'm not an expert, nor do I claim to be, so what do you think? Do you like this record? Do you not like this record? And what do you want to hear from me next? Press this button right here to subscribe and get updates on the Metal Meltdown fucking immediately. And as always, you have yourself a fantastic fucking day.